my opinion on the price right now is, did they buy up RAM a month ago or not? If they didn't, I think they might need to cancel the Steam machine. If they did, I think they'll be fine then, obviously. And welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, Tom. And this episode is brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com and their Black Friday sale, where you can get Windows 11 Pro for just $24 with code Broken Silicon, and Silver Knight PCs, where you can get 10% off their incredible pre-builts and other gaming hardware with that same code, Broken Silicon. Today, I'm joined by somebody that hasn't been on for a couple of years, actually 2.5 years now, and it's going to be pretty fun, I think, going back through some of the predictions we had about VR almost 3 years ago. But I don't want to waste any more time. Please introduce yourself, tell everybody who you are, what you do, and how have you been? It's been a while. How have you been over the past few years?
Hey, thanks for having me again. It has been a long time, to the point where I probably will forget most of the things we talked about in that last time we got together. But hi, I'm Brad. I'm pretty well known, for better or worse, in the VR XR community. I got pretty well known for kind of sharing what types of things are coming out technology-wise and hardware-wise, but did a lot of YouTube stuff. But now I mostly took a little bit of step back from YouTube to relax a bit. I work at a company called EOZ. We actually make products for the VR community and stuff, and that's what I've been doing mostly. And I also had a kid, so that made YouTube not as desirable because I could just relax, do this job, and hang out with my kid. And yeah, I've been good. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember because you do have a job that you do separately of YouTube. I believe you started doing YouTube kind of as a hobby, and then for a few years it started to kind of blow up a little bit. So did it ever feel like that was your second job, or was it always just a hobby?
Honestly, I always treated it like a hobby. I think that kind of tells in how I presented myself in a lot of those videos too. But yeah, I always see it as a hobby. I think it's really hard to, I mean, even if I wasn't in VR, which is obviously a very niche area to be in, especially if you want to make videos every week, which is only sustainable on YouTube, I still don't think I would enjoy the grind of YouTube forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, not that it's really that important to this discussion, but like one thing that I think has kept me kind of centered is, and I've heard other YouTubers say this as well, is having a weekly podcast makes you actually have structure, because otherwise I think most YouTubers tend to, and you'll see this, they'll go like 6 months without making a video, even though it's their job. And it's because they don't have to do anything that week, so they end up not doing it. Or they think they need to do a ton, but they don't know what they need to do, because again, they don't have like a weekly podcast, and they'll just put out a video a day and then burn out. So it can be very tricky.
I think people always like dream to be a YouTuber, but like they don't realize there's when you're a YouTuber, you're not just an entertainer, you're also like a business person. You're like managing your own deals most of the time. Like you're editing your own video. It's a lot of work, man. It's really not worth it unless you're like so high up on there on the totem pole. But yeah, it's I don't know if you've ever dealt with this, but I guess you have a real job, so like you probably wouldn't say this, but like people would ask me like just random, I meet a friend of a friend at a party. I'm shopping for a new car, and they ask me what I do. And a pet peeve of mine, and it shouldn't be, is when I say I'm a YouTuber, always they're like, oh, my son wants to be one. And I'm like, no, he doesn't. He doesn't know what it is. And he thinks it's doing backflips off of Lambos, not tech analysis or like benchmarking systems and troubleshooting stuff. And saying you're a YouTuber practically means nothing. I'm going to be honest. It'd be like saying if a writer said, I use a pencil. It's like you can use a pencil for a lot of different things. Yeah. No offense to other people who do the grind. Respect you, but it's not for everyone. It's really not for everyone. It should not be the top job that every kid wants to be. That's sad, as you say.
Yeah. All right. So I think where I want to start with is I looked through the last episode that you were on, and just like where we were talking about Apple Vision Pro, the Quest 3, PSVR 2, and I've got to say, a lot has changed since then.
Yeah.
How would you summarize from the VR community's perspective what this landscape has been like late 2023 through 2025?
So I guess I have to split it up in two things. I'm gonna talk about like the what companies are doing now and like how the community kind of feels about it, because I think there has been like a drastic change in kind of both sides. First of all, you're seeing a lot more, I would say, refocusing on like higher end hardware releases from companies. I think Vision Pro might have brought that in more, because before it was just Meta Quest, and that made the industry so price sensitive and afraid to do anything higher than like something that is unsustainable in my opinion. But yeah, you see
PSVR 1 kind of did that too. Like it was pretty cheap compared to $1,000 because it was jerry rigged together and like had all these products, but it did make the floor very low.
They really did do, like, it's actually amazing how much they did with that hardware, frankly. Like I think your last episode you recorded with your co-host was talking about how the last VR headset they used was PSVR 1, and that was actually crazy to me, because even back then when I know, like, anyway, jerry rigged is the right decision, but they had a great software library, and that kind of kept the thing going very well. And really, I think where it all changed is like the Meta Quest really like just kind of, not only does it just come out at such a good price, but came at like the perfect time with like COVID, and then they kind of boosted it further with the metaverse boom and everything. And I was actually really, I was always a controversial in the community, because I actually hated that time period where there was like the metaverse boom and the Quest 2 was doing so well, because I actually felt there was a stagnation of what like the industry was doing. Like everyone decided, okay, well, Quest 2 is doing this well, it's selling millions of units, this is all VR, XR, AR, whatever it can be, and we're just gonna not deviate from that and just accept the way it is. But I always felt that model was unsustainable, and over time you're just going to see like a fall off in terms of like usage and whatever. And that basically has kind of come into play now. Quest 3 came out, Quest 3S came out, which Quest 3S is more akin to a Quest 2 in terms of pricing and model, but even that doesn't seem to be doing as well as Quest 2 did during its heyday. So Meta has released cheaper headsets, but on the Meta side, it's kind of weird because there's kind of been a total prioritization of going from big banger titles to more of a free-to-play model. Like if you go on the Meta Quest store, you'll notice that all the top titles are free-to-play games, mostly targeted toward very young kids that actually don't get motion sick, which is kind of interesting. Little kids don't get motion sick, so they actually play really crazy games where they're like monkeys or gorillas and stuff, and like bouncing around VR landscapes, and they're actually getting a ton of numbers from little kids. But that's also made like that like alienated a lot of people who want more classical titles.
It's kind of what happened with smartphone markets, right? Where they tried a bunch of things, but then all that happened was free to play, and now you can't. In these phones we have could run many AAA games that are out now. They just don't, because people just refuse to buy them. Yeah,
it's basically a complete mirror of what you just said. Like there are big titles still releasing, and even Meta's funding a lot of them still. Like I think the biggest one is Deadpool. They made a whole game for Deadpool. I guess it's pretty good. I haven't played it, sorry. But basically, if you look at that game, the reviews score is so much like more muted compared to like some of the free-to-play games that are coming out, even Meta first party titles. So if you're a developer and you want to make these like very VR-y single player experiences, there's really no market for you right now. Like you've been kind of alienated from the top player who's kind of reprioritized to this. And from what I understand, even Meta, from a hardware perspective, they were going to release a like Quest 4 next year, but they completely deprioritized that. It's not happening. I'll talk more about that later, probably when we talk about Steam Frame, but they're instead prioritizing more of like kind of something more in line to what they would be as an answer to the Vision Pro. They're going to be like an extremely lightweight pair of goggles that is like tethered to a compute puck on your waist, and they'll be focusing on better screens. They'll be using the XR2 Gen 3 chip, which is finally a new version of the chip from Qualcomm next year, and it's more like content consumption, trying to get people into like what spatial computing, I guess, is what people still call it. So yeah, there's very, very different priorities, and it'll be more expensive as well. It'll probably be around $1,000. So even Meta's not really like rushing to make another super subsidized headset. They're fine with what they have because, again, they want to kind of have everything in this market. Now we have PSVR 2. PSVR 2 is kind of a weird enigma because they released it as a pretty high price that everyone kind of expected, than what people expected it kind of would have been. And I actually think the price wasn't a problem. It's just that people were also expecting really big titles to launch like consecutively over time, like with PSVR 1.
My girlfriend just got me a PSVR 2 because, they're having all these sales right now. And she's like, I don't know what to get him, but I know he doesn't have this. So, and I actually was impressed with Resident Evil 8. I didn't realize how much effort they put into like literally moving the bolt on the gun. It really is not just they added a VR mode. They put an effort into that thing. So, and I want to try it out more and more. It works pretty well. And, I definitely decided to keep messing with it because I saw there's a Metro game on it. Yeah. There's apparently a decent Alien game for it. I saw that they had a whole Hitman thing. I'm like, oh, I love Hitman. So I'm definitely going to mess with this at some point here. And that's all very cool. But the problem, and that's enough for me to like, want to keep it, use it for a while. I've got like maybe 8 or 10 games, but what's weird is it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all the games. And it's shocking to me there isn't more, is what I would say. And honestly, it must be a decent device to a lot of people, because otherwise it wouldn't sell at all. Yeah. Like, I mean, Sony's doing, it's surprising it still sells at all. I mean, because Sony's not really doing anything to prop this thing up. Am I wrong?
I see it the same way as you. It's been like, even I gave a pretty harsh review when it came out, frankly, because I actually feel like the biggest boon to the Sony PSVR 2 is they put no effort into allowing people to play PSVR 1 titles on it, which I thought was like really destructive to it.
I can't play Super Hot on it. That's insane.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. Just, I don't know. That's kind of like, it's good hardware. It's got eye tracking, which eye tracking is like, I think, one of the fundamental technologies of this medium, and that like really brought in like the first consumer price eye tracking VR headset and stuff. But like the software side has been very disappointing, even like, yeah. So, but they did, like you said, they did discount it for Black Friday. Like, it's like $300 right now, and it also works on PC. You can plug it into your PC as well, which is like adds a lot of value to it. So, but yeah, like you said, it's in a weird place. I also think because people were so dedicated to the Meta Quest platform that there hasn't been like much incentive to make these super high-end single-player games that PlayStation VR 2 would be able to benefit off of as much. So I don't really see it getting better unless Sony literally like payrolls some dev studios to get going and stuff. And then finally,
it seems like they're just content to be like what the meme of like Homer fading into the bushes. It feels like that's what they're doing with PlayStation VR. Just like they did it, they got it out, and they're like, goodbye. That's what it feels like to me a little bit.
Yeah, I think it hurt some people when Astrobot, which was originally a PSVR only game, came out, and there was like no VR support. That hurt a lot of people's feelings in the VR community. So I know. Yeah, that's PSVR 2. I think it's pretty good hardware for the price that they're selling at, but it's just like there hasn't been really, I think, a huge push behind Sony, as we said. And then I think the other big thing is Vision Pro came out early last year. Very expensive device, very low volume device for sure. And I personally love it still. I just want to say that before I get going. So any bias I might have toward how I feel about it, I want to get that ahead of time. But yeah, extremely high-end headset. They refreshed it this year with the M5 processor to give it a little more kick. But change nothing else, and the adoption for it is obviously very slow. It's mostly enterprise focused, I would say, is like where most people are adopting it. Consumers, only very rich consumers that like maybe like to travel, like me actually. I'm in China right now, and I'm literally actually doing this podcast from my headset right now, and this is actually my 3D model representation, and I have a bunch of screens and everything.
Impressive.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I would say the device is the most impressive consumer technology that's been released in the past 10 years, but it's so expensive, it's so niche, and to who wants it, that it's like, I don't know. I think these things can exist, but it's just like not a mass market device, like reality wise.
Well, I remember us talking about it. Actually, Moist Queasy Bartlett Lake Soup. This guy's name is like 5 inside jokes in the Muslim community. He says Apple Vision Pro 2 years ago. On Bradley's last appearance, there was almost a positive outlook. I would say there was a positive outlook on it, understanding that it was expensive partly because it was bleeding edge and it was all actually expensive to make. But what are your thoughts on it now? And the way I would summarize our opinion, or at least your opinion that I agreed with once I heard you say it, give you credit there, is you said, it's what VR should be. And so no matter what it costs, we're going to make it. And then hopefully over time that becomes cheaper instead of making something that isn't good. And so people try it and don't want to try VR again. If they try this, they will want to try VR. And hopefully over time it will become cheaper. That's what our hope was, right? Yeah. How would you say that's panned out?
I still feel like that's kind of the long-term how I feel about XR. And that's why I feel like actually now, like the current landscape of XR, even though it's like, again, it's like the trowel of disillusionment after the huge stupid metaverse boom. I actually feel XR is in like genuinely a much more healthy place now than it was a few years ago, just from like a long-term perspective sort of thing. And I think if Apple keeps doing this like over the long term, I still see the Vision Pro as kind of like the Apple Lisa moment of like headsets, where it's like, it's clearly not something that's going to be picked up by every person, but it's going to build like this over time, like a baseline of like what people will do. And the thing I always wonder the most in terms of like long term is like, I was kind of like dissing the Meta Quest store for being like very little kid focused and stuff. But like, I kind of wonder after 10, 20 years, these kids who grew up with like the Quest as their Nintendo, they're going to see headsets very differently than like the current adult users do. Will they be okay with adopting a headset as their main computing thing when they're older? And maybe they prefer that because that's just what they're used to growing up. So there's a lot of things where it's like, yeah, XR is not like this short-term thing that's going to explode. It's probably not even this midterm thing, but like, I still think there's genuine value that will happen from this medium that just will not be stopped, because it's the sci-fi thing. Everyone always thinks about it. Yeah, they think about it in a pair of glasses, but like the realities of that are just so ridiculously impossible for the future, near-term future, that these things will get smaller. And I think again next year when we see Meta's kind of new focus on small and lightweight stuff, it'll be interesting to see how people react to it.
Moist Queasy Bartlett writes in again and says, the Meta AR glasses are personally the coolest thing to recently launch. AR is something that I think more people will jump on over VR, actually. Do you think more companies should switch to AR with their struggling VR departments, or do you see this as another failed Meta product? I just hope laws are passed so I don't have to see ads on a random street corner if I do happen to pick an AR device up in the future.
I mean, like the billboards that already exist everywhere. Yeah. Anyway,
I guess that is a fair point. You do actually see ads on every street corner already, my friend. It's like one of those things where like you'll see, like, you've seen this a lot with like these tech evangelists. They'll be like, soon we'll be able to communicate without moving our mouths. It's like, we like make facial expressions.
Yeah.
Just look at. Anyways, go on.
No. So I have those. Okay, when you say AR, I have to like kind of push back, because the thing that Meta released this year was basically smart glasses with a monocular display. They call them the Meta Ray-Ban display glasses, and again, they're only in one eye, your right eye. They're not AR glasses, I would say. They're more like a HUD to what you would normally do with the non-display display glasses. And I think they're actually worse than the glasses without display, frankly, because there's a lot of things that people don't really think about when they think about the difficulties of AR glasses, other than like the battery like consumption and like the power needed to do all these things. But like, for example, the user just said like, what's stopping Meta, right, from allowing the glasses to put a billboard up on the wall in the street corner, right? Well, the current glasses don't even have that sort of multiple plane of existence where they can overlay objects onto things. They can only it's more akin to like having a like a smartwatch on your wrist and then putting it up to your face and like computing that way. That's really where it's at right now.
And maybe when you walk by a restaurant, your watch goes, by the way, this has something, but it's not like it's projecting it in some Ready Player One way everywhere.
Exactly. We are so far from that it's like, basically, here another thing to your question. Do you think more companies should switch to AR with their struggling VR departments? If they could, they would have already done it. All of them would have done it. Apple would have not released a headset. Meta would have released a true AR glasses. Like, there's so many difficulties. Another thing I want to talk about, like, I know I ran a lot about AR, but it's just like there's a lot of things that people don't think about. And me being this medium, I've tried every AR glasses out there, like at CES and stuff. That's the stuff I focus on. Another thing people don't think about is, so a VR headset, you put it on, and they set the focal distance of your eyes to one infinity point. So everything is like basically always in focus, right? With AR glasses, they have the actual display you're looking at one focal point, but that's actually a problem because the world is still continually passing light through at multiple focal points. So you're actually not able to focus on the real world and the digital stuff you're looking at the same time, which also ruins the concept of AR. In fact, I actually have the Meta glasses, so I can diss on it because I bought them myself. And the last time I used them was I was in the grocery store and I was using it as a viewfinder for the camera. And I was recording a bunch of footage because it was like a very famous grocery store in China. I know, weird concept of famous grocery store. But I was so focused on the viewfinder that when my glasses died from battery, I was getting kind of dizzy because my eyes were trying to refocus not only from the singular display in my right eye that I had to focus on as well, but just the different focal point of the real world and like readjusting to that. So again, they have to figure out those problems. They have to figure out how do they map the environment and able to process the information to tell like a display to map the depth to match the real world, which takes a lot of processing power. Apple does it and they need a freaking laptop grade chip to do it.
And a powerful laptop chip.
Yeah, a powerful one. So like, I know I'm ranting about it, but there is so many difficulties to getting it. And basically, if you want something AR, you just kind of have to settle for what we have now because it's just the reality of physics and technology right now. It'd be great if we could have a Vision Pro and a pair of glasses. That'd be awesome. But we just can't.
It sounds like you think that sort of a thing is at least 10 years away, honestly, maybe 20, because it's not like you just need, once we get to 1 nanometer, we'll have the processing power, which we might not actually in the right size. But it's like you seem to think this is going to take a decade or two of R&D just to get the lenses and how we even show things to your eyes correct.
Yeah, I think so, for sure. Like, I would not be surprised if it takes like 2 decades before we actually get acceptable AR quality glasses. Yeah, and you know, that's just like it's kind of frustrating because everyone's calling smart glasses AI glasses, and people are getting confused AI glasses with AR glasses. So it's like it's a pet peeve of mine. I know it's clearly showing, but it really has like kind of just confused regular. And you know, another thing that kind of confused regular consumers. I'll be quick with this rant. Is Meta last year they showed off an actual AR glasses, but it was like a out of the lab things that cannot be mass produced. They made waveguides. Yeah, like that also kind of distorted people's view of how close these things are. But there's a reason why they didn't release that product because it's literally impossible to make in like anytime soon in mass varieties, and it also required a puck to do compute and processing to it. So yeah, there's a lot of things going on.
So how would you summarize how the VR market is doing right now? I mean, I remember I think first time you were on, it's like 2022 or something.
Yep.
That was still when VR was definitely on the upswing. There's a lot of optimism.
Yeah.
There mixed bag 3, like, is it doing well? Is it in a kind of a recession, like a VR recession right now?
Yeah.
Like,
probably.
and where do you, so if it is, it sounds like you're saying it is, like, what do you think gets it out of that? And like, what would be the catalyst for things to change? Or do you think they will anytime soon? I
don't think it will anytime soon, frankly. Like, it's so weird because, again, I really think in our comparison to the metaverse boom where things were just so extremely crazy and I think inorganic, that any there are small successes to be had in XR right now if like you're a small indie dev and you're making very like focused things, but it wouldn't be something that would be like, yeah, you can create a whole studio making VR games or whatever. Like, it's just not realistic, frankly. Um, but yeah, it's obviously always going to be like consider a recession compared to what it was a few years ago. But I do think over time, again, it's just a matter of adding value to these headsets. Like I really do think color pass through or like again adding the AR features to headsets did give a lot more usage out of it. In fact, like it's even been proven like the Meta Quest 3 where Meta released a report in like one of the most top used apps after they added color pass through in AR was actually YouTube. People were like more likely to watch YouTube videos in a headset just by adding that color pass through. So like I think little trickling things over there will just slowly increase the value to people.
And by color pass through, you mean like they're watching YouTube, like they have this virtual big screen in front of them, but then the rest of the world outside of it is color instead of just showing up as black and white. Like
Exactly.
that made them more likely to use it just to watch TV if they could still see the world around them.
Yep, exactly. That was a huge value add. I think that people still don't. We'll talk about Steam Frame later, but yeah, it's. I think it was a miss that Steam Frame didn't have that, for example, built in.
Right. So, just to summarize, it seems like you think, yeah, look, there was a huge VR boom. Every company was saying they were going to make a VR headset. We were all going to live in shipping containers and think we were traveling across the world, and we're going to do business meetings with Zuckerberg and VR. And then it's kind of crashed. It feels like Apple, they did their thing, but I feel like almost much like Sony, they're kind of stepping back from it. People are stepping back. There's a slowdown in like games, and look, there's new VR stuff. There's new VR games coming out every year. There's stuff, but it's just kind of a fraction of what it used to be. And you think it's going to continue like that for a while?
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think realistically, I would like to give Apple a little more props because every time they release a new OS update for this headset, I think the value like actually doubles each time. Like, I mean, I talk about my face when they released this headset, I was not comfortable going on shows or like meetings with the persona they call it. Whereas now it's like I feel it's acceptable enough to where I can do it and kind of sometimes get a wow
I like
factor.
this a lot more than Zuckerberg's emoji face people. A lot more.
Yeah, with the Eiffel Tower in the background. Yeah, I think so.
This piece of content is brought to you by CDkeyoffer.com. CDkeyoffer.com is the best place to get reasonably priced Microsoft operating systems and Office products. And you know, they've been a key sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead, if you can believe it, for over 5 years. And they've remained a key sponsor for all of that time because they've just been reliable. I've used them for practically every PC build I've done throughout all that time. My family members use them. My friends use them. Like, no joke. I have friends reach out like every month, like, hey, I'm building a PC. What's that Office website you use? And I say CDkeyoffer.com. And I say the same thing to the Moore's Law is Dead community. No complaints. The tens of thousands or really hundreds of thousands of Moore's Law Z fans have been using them for all this time as well with no complaints. So if you are looking to get fairly priced Microsoft software, go to CDkeyoffer.com during their Black Friday super sale. This is where you can get the best prices, and if you do, make sure you use offer code BrokenSilicon for 25% off all Microsoft products, and then Die Shrink for 3% off everything else on the website, because they do sell games as well. You should check them out for that too. And one more time, thanks after dozens of ads with them, some holding a dog, some not holding a dog, and check them out. CDkeyoffer.com. I should put my dog down because I don't know how much longer I can get her to behave like this. Although maybe it'll be a long time. She is kind of a baby. All right, well, let's talk about the Steam Frame.
Yeah.
I think I just want to put a quarter in the machine and let you go. I mean, I haven't studied it super hard. How would you summarize its specs, and then summarize it relative to the competition, and just what do you think about it? Do you think it'll be successful? What would you tell people if they asked you to describe what the Steam Frame is?
I feel like Steam Frame is Valve's kind of version of maybe a Quest 4, or maybe between a Quest 3 and Quest 4. It's very interesting that they focused hard on the wireless PC VR play, because I actually think that was probably the lowest effort thing they had to do for this device, whereas they actually built it to be a completely standalone SteamOS PC, they're calling it. They had to build a whole bunch of like software stack to where you can run Android ARM stuff on it, you can run Windows ARM stuff on it, you can run Windows x86 on it. Obviously, it'll depend on what title that is and how well that will run, but the amount of work...
Am I correct? Like, they might let you run some Steam VR games that were programmed for x86.
Yeah.
Like,
they were actually
do that. When I saw that,
it.
I was... Oh, that's interesting. I'm fascinated. By the way, I'm fascinated too, because I've been very critical of Qualcomm's attempt to make x86 compatible laptops.
Yeah.
And I just can't wait to find out if Valve and NVIDIA can do it. And there was no issue with ARM on Windows. The issue was Qualcomm on Windows. But anyways, go on.
No, I agree. I think so. There's actually been a lot of people kind of doing this with Quest headsets with something called WinLater. I think people also do it on Android phones, where it's like almost the same software stack that's been just paid for by Valve and all their open source contractors and devs. And so people have been like testing this out for years. But this the Steam Frame will be like truly like they built the graphics drivers from the ground up based on FreeDremio and stuff. Like they this will be probably the best experience trying to do this on a device. And I think that's where like the magic of this device will come in for people who adopt it. Now, who will adopt this thing? Not mass market for sure. I still think it'll be kind of similar volume into people who adopted like the Valve Index, their previous headset. And we'll talk more about this, but I always feel like Valve releases stuff that caters more toward tinkerers than like mass market type of people, because Valve's very small and they're very different in terms of like, well, we can't release a product like MetaQuest where we're going to release huge software updates every few months that add a bunch of features, because they're Valve and they don't do that. So we're just going to release something that's incredibly open, see what the community does, and let that kind of guide our stances, what we're going to do later on in this medium or this next generation hardware. But yeah, just to talk about specs real quick. It uses 2160 by 2160 per eye, up to 144 hertz in experimental mode. LCD is it's very similar actually to the Quest 3 panels, and not too different than what the Quest 4 panels were originally going to be as well before it was canceled. It uses it's slam tracking now, so it's just like, Vision Pro, Quest, like it doesn't need Lighthouse anymore. And now, again, the downside of that is they didn't add color pass-through cameras to the headset built in, which I think is a big miss, because they did a bunch of advertising talking about how you can play your entire Steam library in a big screen, like what we were talking about earlier. And they kind of actually misadvertised it, because the trailer even showed someone in like an outdoor environment where it's like all colorful with the big screen, but in reality it's gonna be black and white as the background. That hurts me the most, because also when you have tinkerers using this device and it's a full Linux PC, you're gonna have a lot of people experimenting with like all the windowing manager, where you're gonna be able to run pretty much any Windows or Linux app with probably some tinkering there as well. But that kind of promise where you're not locked down to a singular app store, what apps you can run in that environment, has a lot of interesting promise, I think, to me. The controllers are clearly also kind of indicative of what Valve feels this headset's meant to do, because they're very like gamepad-y like they literally took a controller and split it in half. So there's a lot more focus. Again, like they advertise the wireless PC VR, but it's weird because I feel like there's way more going on here than just that aspect, where they're trying to like build a Linux computer that you wear on your face in sort of a way. So
it feels very Steam Deck like, in that it's like, yes, they made this one thing that you can use for what they're telling you it is, but the Steam Deck really seemed like a Trojan horse to build up this whole new competitor to Windows, and that seems to actually be going well. It seems like they might be doing a similar thing with like ARM, right?
Yeah, I do feel like as well, like I don't know, I don't really know what their I wonder if they're doing this because they are worried about a potential ARM day where Windows and Qualcomm finally does get their act together, and like it just explodes and everyone's buying ARM Windows laptops or whatever. And then all of a sudden Valve has no answer to how they can run their entire Steam library on this new system everyone's adopting. So I always feel like this sort of thing, it's good for a headset environment because low power and stuff, but also it kind of has a sort of footholding of like, well, what if this happens, or what if, because that's probably a risk factor that's brought up a lot in the high end business meetings at Valve offices of like, hey, how do we keep Steam relevant in the long term? Because no matter what product they're releasing, the main product is always Steam. That's the end all of it. So they care more about the health of that than anything else.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I don't know if you remember off the top of your head, the Quest 2 had the XR2 Gen 1.
Yeah.
Is that what that had? Right. Also you were talking there, just trying to like put together like what level of performance this new one has over the Gen 1. I'm saying what's in the Steam frame, and quite a bit faster. It kind of seems like, I remember my math kind of being with the Quest 2 that it had something maybe a little weaker than, or somewhere around an Xbox One, maybe some kind of around there in performance. And this new one, I mean, this could be not a PS4 Pro or Xbox Series S, but actually maybe somewhat close to that, maybe about as good as a Switch 2, which is pretty much the same thing if you have the right software. That is getting to that minimum VR requirement in the headset now. And I say minimum VR, it's Valve's minimum VR, not the weak sauce Quest 2 minimum VR. This is capable of running Half-Life Alyx natively, probably, then, if they programmed it right.
Yeah, and they've been developing this headset. They officially confirmed to press that this has been like started development in 2018. And we actually, again, for those who don't know me, I basically do a lot of data mining with my community on Valve stuff, and that's how we end up usually finding stuff like the Steam controller and what ended up being the Steam machine pretty early on. But we mostly focus actually on this headset and trying to data mine for this headset. And we've seen so many iterations of this headset. Like they've built drivers for previous generations of Qualcomm chips. So they actually genuinely were waiting for the performance to get to a certain point before they were willing to release a standalone headset. And to add more to your point, the Quest 3 XR2 Gen 2, XR2 Gen 2, that's based on a Adreno 740, and the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3 is based on Adreno 750. So there's about a 30% GPU benefit there as well. Yeah. So you're going to get a bit more performance even than a Quest 3, which is the latest mainline product from Meta. Now next year when Meta releases a new thing, we'll see how that goes. But yeah, for now, it will probably be one of the more powerful standalones on the market outside of the Apple stuff, which are not even, that's crazy.
Well, yeah, it's not going to even remotely approach that.
No.
I think this is probably pretty close to a Switch 2 in performance, which I think is interesting because that is where you get to this point where this could just be your PC and be your PC in a way that really is your PC. Like this can run any game. They were probably just waiting for that level of performance to be there, and then that's when they prepared this thing. And then I also saw, I don't know if you mentioned this, maybe I missed it, but you said it also has the pancake lenses as well, which is significantly better, right? I still don't think I've used a device with pancake lenses.
Oh, man.
Because the PSVR 2 doesn't have that, right?
No, they still have for now, which they had to because their PSVR 2 uses OLED on glass and they don't get very bright, whereas pancake lenses,
I see,
they're very light inefficient. So you need you usually see LCD or like the micro OLED on like Vision Pro and the Galaxy XR headset that just released. But pancake lenses are probably like, I think visual wise, probably the biggest step up that VR's had since like 2016. Every headset from now on should be releasing with this optics setup because they're that much more clear.
All right. So how would you summarize? Well, let's actually do this question first. Red writes in and says, on the Steam VR machine, I feel like it's going to have the same issue as the Steam machine, which is price. No
Yeah.
base stations. I think it will be $800. I doubt this new VR machine will be priced competitively with the Quest 3, and it's going to be 800 to 1,000. So the Quest 3 has pancake lenses, though, right?
Yeah, it does.
What is it? What does it cost right now? Isn't it like $500?
It's like $500. Yeah.
So I have the Quest 3 bomb sheet, and when I look at that compared to what's in the Steam frame, I don't see it is costing that much different to make them from each other. Maybe a little more. I mean, but I want to know if you have any pricing expectations, because my expectation would be if they wanted to go for volume, they could go for 500 or less. I think the Quest 3 has a good margin on it. I know it does actually, because I see how much it costs for them to make it. And they're charging like $100 more. But you know, with some of these other upgrades, maybe it'll be 600. But again, you said it doesn't even have color camera, so in some ways it's worse than the Quest 3. Like, do you think it'll cost more? Because I think it could be 500 if they wanted it to be, but I wonder what you're expecting.
I'm honestly expecting 800. That's kind of my headcanon. So this is kind of the same answer I think we'll have when we talk about the Steam machine and its like sort of pricing structure and how I think it's going to go. But I don't think Valve's a company that wants to make high volume hardware generally. I think they want to make the software and the platform for high volume hardware, but not make it themselves. And the best way you kind of do that is release something that's like a good baseline, but don't make it so cheap that like you can't partner with people like Lenovo or Asus later down the line to make SteamOS powered of their devices for maybe, I don't know, maybe it's higher end devices or lower end or whatever.
Whereas, but isn't that what they're doing with the Steam Deck? The Steam Deck's $400, and they partner with the Lenovo to have a more premium device.
Yeah, and I really think Steam Deck was probably the rare case where like they needed something low end to kind of build a baseline for the products coming after. Because I even think the Steam Deck was useful for the Steam frame because they made all these developers make versions of their games that can run well on Steam Deck, the low end power hardware that will probably run pretty well in the Steam frame in the same way if it's run the same way. In like
any Steam. The Steam frame is stronger than the Steam Deck without a doubt. Yeah.
So like that was useful, I think, from a perspective where it's like, okay, we gotta be painful with this because it has better efforts for our long term plans. But like, I also feel we won't see a Steam Deck 2 very soon, and it's probably for the same reasons. Yeah, I think it's for the same reason I'm kind of discussing, where it's like, again, I don't see Valve as being like a Nintendo or a PlayStation. I see them as wanting to be a Microsoft Windows, frankly. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's the big, which we'll get. I want to save this discussion maybe maybe we'll go to this next. Let's put a pin in that, in the Steam Deck too. Let's make that be the next thing we talk about. But yeah, I don't know what this will. I think the economics of the Steam frame are very different than the Steam machine and the Steam Deck. With the Steam Deck, and my opinion would be also the Steam machine, you're setting a baseline. This is the minimum, and it's got to get mass market to some degree, or this community will not be built up. With VR, I don't know. I think with VR, there's so much more involved in trying to get the experience right that it's not as simple as making it as cheap as possible. And I don't know, maybe, I guess I don't know exactly what they would go for, but yeah, I think it's much more likely the Steam frame is $800 than the Steam machine, in my opinion, because I think VR is just just a whole other can of worms when it comes to like building a PC. I mean, you're competing with 1,000 mini PC companies. So like it's much more competitive. Whereas with VR, you have really like two competitors. I don't even know if I count PSVR 2 that much anymore by the time this launches. It's really just Quest 3, maybe not Apple, not really. Like
they're in a different area, I feel like, almost. Where
if you want to like stake out a premium tier, I think it's easier to do that and not be drowned out in the VR market. But how let's see, another Chris writes in and says, how would the experience of connecting a game to a Valve headset be different than a Meta Quest 3? How much easier do you think it will be to set up? Because what I saw is too, there's just going to be a dongle you plug in and then it just boots up. And it's wireless. I think that actually is huge.
I think that, like, I think one of the biggest problems, like, you're talking about the can of worms that VR adds. One of the biggest parts of the can of worms is the friction and, like, the ability of how annoying it is for people to just want to put on the headset and get started. Well, if you're a PCVR user, Oh, man, people are basically been buying like high-end routers just to plug into their PC who wanted to do a really high-end like PC VR experience with Quest. And like
Mhm.
that's kind of crazy because and the reason they did that is because they wouldn't be able to rely on their regular home network router setup because there'd be too much latency or there'd be multiple devices on that network that would just kind of clog it up. So it was always like you could get a really good experience, but it was actually pretty expensive and like a lot of aspects to it that just weren't
I read
tailored.
that people with PSVR 2, there's like a list of the exact Bluetooth dongle you
Oh
want
yeah,
to plug in so that the hand devices work well, because you can't just assume the built-in Bluetooth card, even an expensive one, will for some reason work well with it. I haven't tried this because I have a Quest 2, so that's what I would use with my PC. But I mean, it sounds like all of these companies have some weird wireless issue connecting it. If Valve makes it as easy as plugging in a stick, that's actually next generation in terms of ease of use, right?
yeah, especially for wireless PC VR. Like this is finally probably gonna be the most best experience and lowest friction experience if you want to just do wireless PC VR. And the funny thing, I just want to bring up the whole thing with the Bluetooth and PSVR 2. Most headsets that release, they usually put the Bluetooth antennas for the controllers on the headset itself because then like they have a direct like low latency connection to the controllers. Where Sony didn't do that, they actually just relied on the Bluetooth that is already built into the PlayStation, so they knew what they were working with. So when they ported over to PC, they didn't have that sort of stability of what they know exactly which Bluetooth radios are on
Yeah.
people's PC.
And with
So
PSVR 1, they just tracked Move controllers and the camera was already connected to the device. So that would have been lower latency than what they're doing now. Interesting.
mostly, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's why there's so many interesting things about VR technology that people have to think about before they release a headset. So that's why I think it's so interesting as like a technology, and I obsess about it. But yeah, I think now one thing I do want to mention, other than the dongle, is ironically the other thing that they showed off was the what they call foveated streaming, which they use eye tracking to basically dedicate where the bandwidth and encoder will focus most of the details and send through the stream to your headset using again the eye tracking. So you look around and it'll know where you're looking and focus on that area. It doesn't save any processing on the PC unless developers add foveated rendering to the actual. That's an app-based thing, so it's not gonna be like a one-size-fits-all for performance. So like even the Steam machine that has less specs than probably like a high-end PC. If you do wireless PC VR with that, you're still going to be limited to the same kind of stuff that you would get sort of from those higher end games. Like No Man's Sky VR, for example, is pretty heavy intensively and stuff. But that feature is also available on. So this is another thing people don't realize is the MetaQuest Pro, which what kind of bombed and doesn't sell anymore, but it released with eye tracking. And Valve released Steam Link for MetaQuest 2 years ago, and they actually launched this foveated streaming, at least an earlier version of it, on the MetaQuest Pro to basically beta test it, preparing for the Steam frame. And any headset that releases with Steam Link that has eye tracking, they've also been bringing it to those headsets as well. So again, you have to also think like Valve's a really weird company because yeah, they want to sell the headset, but also they don't care to sell the headset if they can also get Steam Link on these other competing stores as well. So they're a strange company in a sort of way in that regard.
Yeah, your note about like they've been working on a version of the Steam frame for years with older APUs, like almost playing around with them every year to see if it's good enough. And it seems like it's less about we think now is the right time for a VR device, and it's actually more about we've just been waiting for the right APU, and now that the right APU is out, we're launching it. And on top of that, they're probably just like, well, a lot of companies that were making VR devices have given up. And so just maybe I don't know, when did the last thing they made come out? Like a long time ago.
Valve
right?
Index was 2019, 6 years ago.
Yeah. So maybe just every 5 or 6 years they go, this is how good VR is supposed to be. We want this, like whatever it is, $500 to $1,000 device. And that way this market doesn't completely stagnate. Because if they didn't, you could see no Quest 4 coming out and then there's just nothing. But so, all right, I'm rambling. Let me get to this reader mail here because this will start bringing us into the Steam Deck. Euroblue writes and says, "Hi, Tom and Brad. This question is perfect, I think, for this collab. Valve recently ported SteamOS, Arc Linux base, to ARM64 following their collaboration with the Arc team. Tom has leaked info about AMD Soundwave, which is an ARM-based APU. Yeah, but very budget, I believe. Now Valve is preparing to launch their ARM64 hybrid gaming VR headset. Valve hired contractors to work on the FEX EMU project, which is a lightweight program that allows running x86 64 software on an ARM64 CPU, including games, which is demonstrated by the YouTube channel of the project and Valve during product showcase. So after connecting the dots, my question is, do you think Steam Deck 2 could have an AMD manufactured ARM64 APU, which might provide a jump in performance per hour they said they want? I will jump in here. There's a note here from the editor, Carbon Cry, and he keeps reminding people when they say stuff like this. x86 is not inefficient. x86 can be very efficient if you design it for a small power consumption level, whereas most of the APUs they're throwing into handhelds are 40-watt laptop APUs they rebranded. So there's a reason they're not as efficient usually. But go on. How would you answer this question?
I personally still think the Steam Deck 2 will be x86. I just don't think... So most of the innovation in gaming is still heavily on x86. AMD is literally still making the next generation chips for homes, consoles, and a lot of that technology can
including
trickle down.
A handheld PlayStation is going to be x86.
Yeah, you pretty much took the words right out of my mouth. I think that alone is going to keep Steam Deck 2 on x86 more than any magical ARM emulator will do. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I hadn't thought, well, it's been pretty clear in public statements made by Valve recently that they will release a Steam Deck 2 when the technology is there and when it's ready, not when they think they have to do a refresh every few years. That's actually a very similar approach, I think, to how PlayStation goes about it. Mark Cerny waits until he sees RDNA 2, and then he goes, that's what the PS5 will use. I think he's doing a similar thing with RDNA 5. And hearing you just now explain like the development process for the Steam frame and that they were waiting for the right chip, that further cements in my mind. That's all they're doing with the Steam Deck 2 is they want... And if you read their interviews, it's very clear. They want next generation performance, and they don't want it to be as bulky. They want it to, or at a minimum, they want it to last longer, probably both. And you're not going to get there on Zen 5. You're certainly, and I don't even know if you're going to get there on Zen 6, but I've had quite a few documents, some that I've leaked, where they show these low power cores they're working on that says targets less than a watt per core. And these are things that won't have quite the same IPC. It's not like, Zen 6C, Zen 6. This is like just the compact, lower clocked core that takes up less space, but it is the same IPC. It is fundamentally the same performance. Low power maybe trades 10, 20%, but then cuts that power in half or into a fourth. I mean, it's conceivable with like a Zen 7 low power core. I mean, let me back up here. Some of the stuff I've seen with Zen 7 is that at same performance levels, it might use like 40% less energy than Zen 6. So Zen 7 seems like a massive efficiency leap. After Zen 6 will also be a pretty big one. You take that, take Zen 6 that's using like half the power of Zen 5, Zen 7 that's using half the power of that, and then take the low power version of that. I think it's conceivable you could have an 8-core APU that's pulling 5 to 10 watts. And I think that's what Valve's waiting for. And I think that's probably Zen 7, and then that'd be like 2028. That sounds just about right. 6 years, right, for them to launch.
Now, here's the question. Will Valve get it right when that is available, or will they wait a year for it to get cheaper as well and it be the older node? Because even like the Steam Deck, when it came out, RDNA 2 was still like a gen, almost 2 gens old, right, when it came out?
When did the Steam Deck 2 launch? I mean, Steam Deck 1.
2021, I think. Yeah, I think it was 2021.
Yeah, so it may have been 2, actually. Because they talked about it for a long time before it came out, so it always feels like it launched earlier than it. But anyways, the Steam Deck 1 had a weird life, though, because my understanding is that APU was originally for the Microsoft Surface. And so that was a project that was it might have been thrown away, where Valve to have not swooped in and said, oh, you need to get rid of this. we'll take it. I think that's what's going on with the Steam Machine, by the way. And so I don't think I wouldn't be so sure they're like, again, like Sony or Microsoft, where they want the newest thing right away for competitive reasons. Having said that, I don't think you're going to have like a 2-year delay in the technology, or it's not necessary that they do that.
Right.
But I wonder like what specs you would other specs you would expect out of the Steam Deck. Like, what would you expect it to focus on? Because I mean, my opinion just basically is, what do they do now? It's like an 800p screen that can hit 90 on the OLED model. Usually it's running games at 40 frames a second though, if not 30. I would say something twice as fast as that gets you to the 90 instead of maybe around 90 frames a second instead of 40 or something. And then if you double that again, you might get to like 1080p or something. Like, so I think they probably want something at least, and I think they may have even said this in an interview, at least 6 to 8 times faster. And they're going to want that in something that consumes half the power, which is like 10 watts or so. And besides that, though, what would you look for it to have in terms of performance? Do you think they'll mess with any AI stuff? Do you like, what form factor do you think the screen size would be, bigger or smaller? I'm wondering what you think they would target.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if I was them, I would go to 120 hertz, not even just to expect running at native, but I think like the whole frame doubling thing that they're doing with like the 45 to 90 has been pretty valuable. And if they can hit like an actual 60 frames per second timing, that 120 hertz also looks quite good. But also like I think variable refresh rate as well will be pretty valuable on a low power device like that. I don't really feel like there's too much they can do other than just like the kind of the simple basics of better. Yeah. Like they kind of already like almost nailed a baseline of what a handheld of that type should be. I'd like to see some modular, like we didn't talk about this with the Steam Frame, but the Steam Frame's modularity is really interesting for a headset. And I would like to see more of that actually.
How is it modular?
So the actual they call it the core, comes out of the headband, and the headband actually has the the speakers built in, and it connects to a port on top of the core that handles audio, USB, some small amounts of data, like a piece, like plugging a speakers to a headset. And also the back battery as well is, you don't have to have that plugged in. You can use your own battery or a source or whatever. And there's also on the nose part of the core, which is again the thing you wear out of your face, there's a whole PCIe port as well to add whatever attachment you might like. They were kind of hinting to people adding aftermarket color pass-through cameras because it is like can access MIPI directly and stuff like that. But I think you'll also see people try to do stuff like they'll add face tracking to it and that kind of aspect, and also has an SD card slot, which I know doesn't sound crazy, but for VR headsets, no VR headset release has an SD card slot. They always try to upsell you on the data.
Oh, so they still don't, even with the Quest 3.
No, none of them have it. Yeah. So there's a lot of little things there that they didn't have to do that like makes it kind of more interesting, because even the head strap thing, there's probably gonna be people literally designing like super high-end audio head straps more similar or akin to what the Valve Index had, because those had like big beefy BMR speakers over their ears where people could just make that, or people like my company can make that and just sell it as an attachment. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening there you just don't see normally on headsets.
So the modularity stuff, you can add an SD card, you can add a different battery. It has a PCIe connection for a lot of different things you could add onto that actually. Yeah. But there's not like a APU, like like swap out thing, because that would be a huge sign to me that they want this to be compatible with Steam Deck too. Like, because that'd be very interesting if you could have a VR device. I think we talked about this last time you were on. You could like take out the APU, like with all the RAM and like a computing brick, and then put it into a handheld, put it into a Steam machine. That would be the dream, really.
That is what I still want this technology to go. Again, Meta's going to release probably something closest to that, ironically, next year under their own umbrella, but it probably won't be very open to do what you want with it. But I do think that's probably where things should go. Just not only just because of the modularity aspect, but I think getting some of that heat and power off your face and weight will be pretty cool. So yeah.
Yeah, I didn't realize how modular it is. I would agree. Then I think they'll charge more than the Quest 3 for sure. There's no way. I didn't know it had those features. This piece of content is brought to you by Silver Knight PCs, a disabled veteran-owned and operated pre-built PC and parts company headquartered in North Carolina that ships to FPOs and APOs. Now, why would you choose Silver Knight PCs? Well, let me tell you. First of all, they have some of the fairest pricing that I've ever seen, and I know they're trustworthy too because they're literally friends of the channel. In fact, you can check out an interview with the owner, Ted, on Broken Silicon 113. So I stand by them. But it's not just about, me liking them or them having fair pricing. They have great quality as well. They offer 3-year system warranties on parts and labor with paid shipping both ways in the continental United States. And they also have per component warranties in the event you change maybe a part in your system, but then another leftover part breaks. They will honor that as well. And, most of their parts are the higher quality offerings as well. Like they don't cheap out on PSUs or cooling. They use the best stuff out there. Most of their power supplies, in fact, have 5 to 10-year warranties. Oh, and by the way, that 3-year warranty I mentioned, it's transferable without any paperwork involved. As long as someone has the order number, they can just send it to Silver Knight PCs if they're a new owner, and they'll say, yep, this PC was sold this amount of time ago with these parts. We will honor your warranty. That means you can gift this to someone, sell it in a couple years, and tell the person you're selling it to, hey, this still has a year warranty left on all of its parts. And they also have a trade-in program as well if you want to upgrade sooner rather than later. Maybe send in a graphics card and get a better one back. They also do that. And finally, they are doing a phenomenal tiered pre-built promotion right now where you can decide between a $1,000, $1,500, or $2,000 build. And all of those come with the high quality components and amazing warranties I've talked about. And also, you can get 10% off them right now with offer code BROKENSILICON. But you know what? They also assured me they did plan ahead and they did stockpile DRAM months ago because they saw this coming. They are one of the companies that planned ahead a bit, but I suspect these things will still sell out very quickly with how good the deals are. So please support Moore's Law is Dead by checking out Silver Knight PCs through the link in the description below. And if you do, make sure you use offer code BROKENSILICON to get 10% off everything on their website. All right. Well, speaking of arguing over price, my God, I feel like every few days when I go to check the news to prepare something I'm working for, there's a new argument over what the Steam machine will cost. That is no exception for this weekend that we're recording. I put some more thought into it. I looked at a few more things before we started recording, but I just want to get your opinion on this because this has been quite a debate. I basically said I think I said 450 to 600, maybe 700. Digital Foundry was like it's going to be 450 or 400. They're a little more aggressive in how cheap it will be. I've seen people say it's going to be $1,000. I personally think there's no way in hell it's $1,000 unless they want this to not sell at all. Which I don't know. Maybe they don't. They are Valve. But what do you like? Even besides price, like what do you think of the Steam machine? How important do you think it will be? What do you think about its specs? And what do you think about its price? What do you think it will be priced?
I think $700-800 sounds right, in my opinion. That's enough for the Valve to take a profit. And more so, I think about like if another company released this with SteamOS, more specifically, so they don't have to pay for the Microsoft licensing cost or whatever, like would they be able to make a profit on it? And I think that's where they're still trying to do more so. Because again, like I said earlier, I don't think that they're positioning this as like a console or like a PlayStation killer or a Mac Mini killer even, because frankly, you're going to be able to pretty easily buy this and install Windows. Like there's nothing too special in the hardware here that I see people not being able to do something like that. So that also adds risk for them.
Do you think they will? Because I make the argument, I don't think people will install Windows because to install Windows, you're going to have to, go out of your way to put on a different operating system, which 90% of people won't want to do, if not 99%. And it's not, I feel like it's different than SteamOS. SteamOS, you might get a 20% performance boost in addition to it doesn't blue screen anymore. And that's a compelling argument for going out of your way to install it. Whereas a device that, and I made this argument on Twitter, actually, like it's going to be sold on Steam's website or through the Steam store.
Yeah.
So even to get this, you have to have a Steam account, and it's direct to consumer. So who's the person who already has a Steam library, buys a Steam machine, it boots up, and it's like log into Steam, and they're like, I think I'd rather get 20% less performance and go out of my way to buy Windows for like, well, $24 if you use my links below, but still like spend the extra money to do it. I think it's different than Xbox Magnus, where Xbox Magnus will boot up and people will go, of course I'm installing Steam. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. I think it's a different argument.
So for me, it's like if they priced it like a console, everyone in the PC industry, like whether they're random startups that are in India or whatever, they'd be buying this up in droves and installing their software. It's very different like the Mac Mini, which is like a really cheap computer. But with the Mac Mini, if you buy it, there's literally no way you're installing any other OS on it. So for Apple, it's a lot more safer for them to release something that's a little bit more to cost as in like ecosystem boosting play. Whereas Valve, who are releasing AMD components, if they price it as a console, you're right. Most people who are buying this, like a consumer, would buy it and just use SteamOS on their TV or whatever. But I also just think that if it was like console price, you would have a lot of companies buying it.
But what does console price mean? The Series X is $800. So, I mean, that's
is it really? Holy crap.
Oh, yeah. Microsoft's completely out to lunch. But like, this is my issue, too, with this argument over. I mean, I feel like people are like pulling out Ouija boards to try to read into this thing they said where it'll be priced like a PC, not a console. When consoles range from $300 to $800. I don't even is the Xbox Ally X a console? That's $1,000. Like I don't know that we can really read into that, because a console is up to $800. The PlayStation 5 Pro is $700 right now, I believe. I think most people's gaming PCs are cheaper than a lot of the consoles now.
I just think about like how, well, I think it was like during the Bitcoin surges, like people were buying up old PlayStation 5 APUs or something and like turning them into Bitcoining machines and stuff. And like I just think back to that, where I usually think like if they did actually price it at 500, you would have the kind of the problem I'm sort of thinking of, where you just have a lot of non-gaming consumers buy it up, use it for Windows or whatever usage that they would for their own nefarious purposes. Whereas, again, we should talk about Xbox soon, because I think they're a very kind of different situation, even if people do buy Steam or put Steam on it. But yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing, though, is Valve knows Xbox is about to launch this hybrid console. And my opinion is what Xbox is trying to do is, before they pull the rug out from their fan base, they want to bridge. They don't want to abandon them on the Xbox island where there's no new games coming and they feel burned. And then they say, you know what, screw Xbox. I'm getting a PlayStation, a Switch. I'm going to an app. I'm going to go to Apple. You know, they want them to go, well, there's this new Xbox that runs Windows, but it has my whole library, and I'll switch to Windows instead of switching to one of their competitors. But Valve knows that, and Valve has a chance here to launch something a year before Magnus that just walks out in front of Microsoft before they, like Dunkirk, flee the beaches and go, no, you're not. They're not going to go to Magnus. They're going to go to Valve. I've seen my comments are full of people going, oh, I have a Series S. 80% of Xbox sales, Series sales are Series S, I believe, or at least 70 something. It's the overwhelming majority. And Microsoft is targeting what seems to be a $1,200 to $1,500 device, even though the overwhelming majority of their fan base bought the $350 device. If Valve comes out a year before Magnus is out and says, here's your, I don't know, $600 device that's over double the performance of a Series S, it's nothing fancy, but your whole Steam library is on here too, which, let's be honest, you're going to install Steam on your Xbox anyways. I think they have a chance to just swoop up the whole Xbox market. Like, that's the business case you would make. And I think it's worth pointing out too, I think they profit at $600. I think they profit maybe $100, $150. I think they're making big profits at $600. before we talk about the RAM issue. So that's its own
Yeah.
conversation.
I still think if I was Valve and I'm like such a small company under 400 full-time employees, I feel like it would be better worth of my time to push the Steam Deck with the Steam Dock as like, hey, here's our cheap home console. And then when the Magnus comes out, just have a team focused on making Steam work better on that console that Xbox just released with access to your Steam store on it from a software
I think
side.
Steam Deck's actually in a dangerous territory of not being able to run the latest games, though. That's the other problem is I think it's got another year of running half of AAA games out there, but it is not. I mean, it's, I laughed at when I saw the Ally Non-X for the Xbox Ally Non-X, and they're like, "Oh, this will play your Play Anywhere Xbox games." I'm like, guys, this has a third the compute units of the Series S. This isn't playing any of your Series S games. I feel like in 2 more years, this will pretty much just be an indie device. Though I don't think you can really build a machine around it anymore. And look, they showed off streaming to it too, kind of like a PlayStation Portal. I think that's the next thing they're going to start pushing with the Steam machine.
Yeah. I don't know. I still don't see them going. I don't feel like they're too threatened enough by this new thing. I think they built enough extreme goodwill. Actually,
when it comes to this price of the Steam machine, I think the debate, if we're being honest, comes down to, do you believe me when I say I think they profit at $600 or not? Because if you don't, then that's why you think it's $800. But if you do, why do they need to make an Apple profit margin? And I think there's a lot of, and again, like you can or you cannot. Obviously, I will say, if the RAM, actually, let me say this. My opinion on the price right now is, did they buy up RAM a month ago or not? If they didn't, I think they might need to cancel the Steam machine. If they did, I think they'll be fine then, obviously. But assuming they can get RAM for reasonable prices, which is an assumption, I'm actually not sure they can. That's my biggest concern at this point. I think what it comes down to is, whether it's me or Digital Foundry, we're like, guys, I think they break even at 450, maybe 420. So either you think they break even there or they don't, because I can build you a PC right now that's stronger than the Steam machine for 650. So I don't know why they would do worse than that.
Could you remind me, because I kind of forgot. So I know it has 8 gigabytes of VRAM, but does it have like 16 gigabytes of like dedicated system RAM as well?
It's just DDR5, 16 gigabytes.
Yeah, I remember when like we first data mined it, they were actually testing it with 8 gigabytes of that RAM plus the 8 gigabytes of VRAM. So I'm just assuming from that they probably made a deal earlier on at what they were going to get RAM at volume already, and
it would be very stupid if they didn't. Let's put it that way. If they were like, let's buy, the recent price drops for Black Friday on the PlayStation, I'm told it's because they bought up tons of GDDR6 at the bottom. Like, they have stockpiles of it. They're dropping the price because it doesn't cost them that much to make these PlayStations right now. Whereas I was told that partners of Microsoft are being warned that the Xbox prices may go up, because they didn't. They still, and it's already $800 for a 2 terabyte Series X. So I honestly don't, I would assume Valve is smarter than Microsoft. We've seen in the past, they have been many times. But I guess, how big do you think Steam Machine could get, though? Because I think that's the next interesting question. Because I share your disdain for the ways Microsoft has treated its communities. Like they just treat us like we're stupid. They try to milk us. They want you to double buy everything, which that should be Sony's thing, not the people that have like the operating system monopoly.
And also, why are they releasing such a powerful console if they're focused on like cloud gaming?
I think they're just throwing stuff at a wall.
But, I think so too.
I don't know, because they had Xbox Cloud 10 years ago and they haven't gotten rid of it. I don't know that there's that much of a plan.
I feel that's probably true. I agree with that.
But when it comes to Magnus, I don't know. I think look, I see this in some of the submissions for this too, where people are assuming we know the price of the Steam machine. We don't know the price of the Steam machine. We don't know the price of Xbox Magnus. Let's be very clear about that. I think likely Magnus is going to be at least $1,000, though, considering they just charged $1,000 for a handheld that's weaker than a Series S. So that's why I would assume that. Well, not weaker than a Series S. It's stronger than a Series S, but weaker than a Series X, and it costs more. I think the pricing trajectory of Xbox is clearly up. moving forward. All
Right.
indications are that. But I also think, to be fair, it will be as strong as a high-end PC. So maybe
Yeah.
you can justify that more. If I'm playing devil's advocate here for Xbox, I do think this thing looks significantly faster than any other console, or it'll be faster than the PS6. I don't think it's actually going to be light years faster, but you will be able to use it for so many different things. So I guess
Yeah,
that's the
and
explanation.
I think it's easier for Microsoft to release a product like that if it's more like a PC anyway. So because again, they own both the Xbox and the PC platform, they can do whatever they want with this thing. So
Yeah, and I
yeah.
mean, look, the rumor is that this was how they convinced Satya Nadella to not kill Xbox. They said, "Oh, it will be a PC." I mean, I haven't heard that from anyone I've talked to, but
Right.
I've seen those rumors online
Yeah.
that Sarah, was it Bond, I think, is in charge of Xbox now, that she like basically told them, "Oh, don't worry, it'll basically be a PC, and we'll have," this is where I get worried, "and it will have Copilot and all this other stuff." I know, I'm a little concerned it's
Yeah.
going to be AI instead of TV this time. But I think there's also an argument that it's more interesting if everyone's trying something different.
Yeah, I think so too. And especially
Like,
like
is there a point in like another PlayStation? Why did it should be its own thing?
yeah, I kind of wanted your opinion on this because like even though we're talking a lot about gaming, I'm not like super gamer into gaming stuff. But like coming from an outsider, it seems like gaming as well is kind of like a weird spot right now. Like all these AAA companies are like getting sold or like taken private, and like what is going on? What is going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, there was an arms race started by Phil Spencer where he tried to buy up half of gaming.
Yeah,
And it didn't go well,
yeah,
and gaming is in a weird space. I think GTA 6 is going to be a massive hit.
yeah,
You still see things like the new Assassin's Creed apparently did better than expected. You see Battlefield 6 doing well. You see a lot of things doing well.
yeah,
And you see a lot of games not. And I think it's usually on the AAA side, not on the indie side. And that's
yeah.
when people say there's not good games, I think there's endless good games. There's so many good games every year. Um, but I think that there's just been too much investment in a lot of AAA studios. And
Yeah.
I actually put this out in some recent content, like especially on the Microsoft side, they went in directions that didn't pay off. And so I think
Yeah.
gaming is fine. It's just kind of was in a bubble 5 to 10 years ago, and it's popping right now. That's how I would summarize it, if that makes any sense.
That's how I feel about VR.
I think that's how we feel about a lot of things right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the final stuff I want to talk about here is just where things go next. So Archer writes in and says, "Hello,
Yeah.
Tom and Brad. Do you think it's at all likely we'll see something bigger than Xbox Magnus by any company sold as a Steam machine? I'd like to see something like that, but I also kind of doubt the engineering effort would go into such a niche product." I mean, my answer is yes, probably. There will be some $2,000 there's a Strix Halo handheld, right? Like there will be the equivalent of that with RDNA 5 made by someone. I don't know who, if it will be a Lenovo thing, but I know that the way RDNA 5 works is they pair CPU chiplets with IO die, or I should say memory controller / graphics chiplets. Like the mid-range one goes in Magnus.
Yeah.
The lower mid-range one will go into Medusa Halo, so the premium laptop chip by AMD. There will be an AT0. It would not surprise me if someone takes an AT0, makes a $2,000-3,000 gaming console thing that runs SteamOS. I think that's the plan. As Steam has the baseline, Valve is the baseline, and there will be
Yeah.
things above that. But I wonder what you think about that and where you think this could go. Like, do you think this is going to be an ever-evolving space of like Steam consoles moving forward?
Yeah, I kind of do. Like, to your point, like, there's that framework desktop that was announced. I think it has Strix Halo, and it's more like
Yes.
kind of similar to Steam Machine in a lot of ways. So I wonder how fast people will buy that and then try to put Steam OS on it and see how that runs games in that environment. So yeah, I agree with you. I think we'll see cool stuff.
And I think this is a huge problem. I don't think this is a problem for Nintendo. They're not competing directly, really. I mean, maybe if Steam Deck 2 did really well, that would eat into Nintendo a little bit, but I kind of see it as its own thing. I think the same with PlayStation. People buy a PlayStation because they want a PlayStation. I don't it will compete with Steam Machine potentially. We'll see what they do, but I don't think they're as worried as Microsoft should be that, because here's what I think Microsoft should be worried about. If you're Sony versus Microsoft, they've always, not always, it's gone up and down, but let's say Sony's like 2/3 of the AAA gaming console market and Xbox is a third, right? That's its own breakup. What Microsoft is trying to do with Magnus is bring the remaining, people, again, like the analogy I made, fleeing Dunkirk, like the remaining 20-30 million Xbox gamers to PC so that they're there and might buy some Microsoft products there instead of going to Apple or whatever. The thing they need to worry about that Sony doesn't as much is this 30 million Xbox pie that they're hoping to keep. What if Steam Machine eats up 5 million and then the Asus box 10 and then the Lenovo box 2 million? Like, I would worry about not half of Xbox people fleeing to PlayStation or something. I would worry about maybe some of them do, but then their pie just gets diced up by all these Steam consoles. I think that's, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. I think that's what Microsoft needs to be worrying about quite a lot right now when I look at what they're doing with their $30 for Game Pass and $800 Series X. Is like, you might just be priming all these people to go anywhere but Xbox, and they're going to have more choices than ever before.
Yeah, especially as we were just talking about earlier, they bought all these studios. Like, how are they going to make that return investment? Valve just takes DirectX, converts it to Vulkan on their system, and kind of just makes money off of what you're doing like all the time. It's crazy.
Well, the more studios Microsoft buys, the more it would behoove them to never have an exclusive and actually to make it run better on PlayStation and Nintendo, because that's where you're going to make money over there anyways. The more you are a game publisher, the more every business decision that is made needs to be on how do we make most of the most money we can on these games, not the most money we can on our subscription service.
Yeah, it's true. It'll be funny. I think it'll be funny. Whatever happens, it'll be funny.
Yeah. All right. Colt Marshmallow writes in, says, any idea what the value is for AMD's relationship for Valve now with the Steam Machine announcements? Personally, even if it's not high margin, Valve seems to provide a lot of software value to AMD devices historically. Yeah, I would say the amount of value Valve is creating for AMD is actually kind of shocking.
Yeah, I think that's the dream scenario for AMD, because like AMD barely even has to develop their Linux drivers too. Valve just says, hey, we're going to take Mesa and flesh it out as much as possible. Try to get some of the features that we are already building on Windows just to work on Linux. Yeah, I'm sure they're very happy with this whole situation.
Yeah, it's the same with Sony too, isn't it? Like, Mark Cerny is over here like helping them design better versions of FSR and RDNA architectures. And it's like, I mean, I don't know where Radeon would be if Valve wasn't and Sony weren't here kind of holding their hands.
Yeah, 100%.
One more, and before I let you go, one more thing too. I can't believe I didn't bring this up. The Steam controller. What do you think about the Steam controller? Because I've actually never used a Steam controller, so I'm wondering what you think about this new one.
I think the new one looks awesome. Like, I'm hoping that the trackpads will work on other devices. Probably won't, but that'd be awesome. Yeah, I just think makes sense. I think the Steam Deck input is awesome. Being able to put that in a controller and use it with home console, it's cool. I don't know. There's not much more to say about it. I like how they took the technology from the index controllers of the capacitive grips, and like they applied it in an interesting way for.
So crazy dumb question.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Capacitive
Yeah, no worries.
Grips. I saw that too on the analog sticks have something on them too.
Yeah, so every button on the Steam controller has capacitive, so it can sense if you're just touching the button instead of pressing down.
Oh.
But also they added that to the grips, so when you're holding the controller, it knows how far your hand is actually from the handle, which could be used for Steam input. And their best example was, hey, what if you want to use gyro aim? Then you can just do this with one hand and keep the other one open and then do gyro aim like this. And they're expecting, of course, again, the community to do other stuff with it. But yeah, it's a neat little thing. On the Index and now the Steam frame, they actually take that technology a step far, where they actually use capacitive to track each finger on your hand of how far it is from the controller. So they can do hand tracking in like Half-Life Alyx, for example, in VR. It's not as extreme as that on the Steam controller, but same underlying technology used.
Yeah, I wonder. Do you see, what do you see the point of the Steam controller being? Just because they wanted to have a project, they have to
Mhm.
have something to bundle with the 2 terabyte Steam machine? Like what? Because I don't think they think this is going to directly compete with how many people use Xbox or PlayStation
Yeah.
controllers on PC, right?
I still think it's the same kind of mission they had with the first Steam controller, whereas they have all this library of games that are not really designed for a gamepad in mind. So they just want to build a controller that also works for those mouse and keyboard games. The best that they can at least get it. So same mission as that.
Yeah, just trying. It's just the first one didn't take off. This is their next attempt at like, almost like filling in the gaps of using a PC as a living room console. It's like we have to give them something. So if they boot up the one thing that doesn't have it, like I think Mass Effect 2, they never added controller support or something weird on PC. If I remember right. That was a weird one. And it's like, well, here, like people, they're like, guys, I know you like keyboard and mouse, but some people use a controller, and we have to find a way to do that effectively.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever tried typing on the keyboard on the Steam Deck, but they like split the controller in two and with the touchpad. So like you move your thumbs over each key and then you press down. And it's actually really inefficient, like probably the most efficient way I've ever typed on like a console device. So there's stuff like that are pretty cool that's activated with this.
Yeah, I just get the feeling with them, no matter if they just, and I know they're a small company, but you know what, Gabe just bought a $500 million yacht. I mean, clearly they're doing well. I just get the feeling that if they really wanted to, they could actually they could be a sleeping giant that really punches above what I think people expect. That is what I heard about the Steam Deck too, by the way, that they expect that to be, they're going for it, you know? So I guess we'll see what the future holds though. I want to thank you, Bradley, for coming on. Please tell people where they can find you.
Mostly just follow me on X. SadlyItsBradley. That's mostly where I'm used, and just treat me like a zoo animal. This weirdo who uses a headset for everything. Yeah, just follow me on there. Watch it happen.
Yeah, but you know, you do have a YouTube channel. You put out a video. You put a couple of videos a year. I'd plug that as well, because at least when you do put out content, it is very thoughtful. You're not just your YouTube channel isn't 100 thumbnails of you like,
I'm not
like
doing
10 minutes long daily news roundup. It's like if you put something out, you have something to say. So I do recommend people subscribe to that.
I agree with that. Thank you. I do agree with that. Thank you.
And otherwise, everybody, thank you for watching and listening. Make sure you subscribe to Moore's Law is Dead on YouTube. Subscribe to Broken Silk on your podcast app of choice. Give us a review there. Comment down below. Like, share. I guess on mobile, you can hype us now. Do that. Whatever new thing YouTube adds next week, do that too. Ring the bell button and consider joining us on Patreon to ask guests like Bradley questions and get access to a catalog of die shrinks. Yep, this is where I usually forget how I should end an episode. So thank you again for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening, and have a good Thanksgiving, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carbon Cry and Carrie No Sugata as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and John Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guests questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, if you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Chits, Daniel D, Nicholas Buckner, Aaron Close, Jan Rauner, Toka, MJB1, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, SNES Chalmers, Jerem Ferrier, Velcome Alev, Jensen Wang, Compressed AI Blocks, Greg Harris Acker, Sarcastro, Chris Rich, Evan Dingle, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Semi Malas, Curry King 3, Chris Anthenos, The Boss Haas, Tommy, Jonathan, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Gamers Unite, Meat and Pork, Ian Clifford, Amiable Chief, Tim Robb, I Should, Travis Gooding, Zoot Suit Taylor, Mads, Patty Cakes, Greg, Michael McGee, Win Wang, Stephen Coates, Mark Mitchell, James Anderson, Mark Raidmaker, Salty Internet Pirate, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, Cameron, Michelle Pell, Hexapuma, Tika Autumn, Reginald Ari, Winstar, Little Germany, James I. Raider, Bart, Let's Go to the Lake, Milton, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, Stephen Dick, McDaffie, Justin Bussell, Austin Haggerty, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Harlan, Brian Wright, Jansen Angima, Slushball, John Swin, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Matthew Cassels, Alex Vega, Solarized 80, Albert Gunkeekum, Sprutnik, Brian P. Hoodat 42, Cornster 671, Penta Winta, Damn M 1988, Omega Doge, Huger Ander Kiwi, Mr. Tiger, John Wick Boomstick, Penguins Love AI, Porcelain Oats, Nick Zoosmania, Charles Russell, Smash Axley, Karim El Masri, AI Soldier 789, Bespoke exclamation point, Rye Hilchi Bowles, Fred Berger, Kevin Koontz, Nolis Vakusis, Jonathan Harris, Callan Reichel, Kainush, Kagani, Truna, Uv Edu, Mail, Johnny Trans, Zubar Ahmed, Josh, RKO, RK0, Penguin from NKVD, Angel of Cake, and of course, thank you, Sarah.